Hi, welcome to Market Chat with Brenda and Lori. I'm Brenda Alfano, mortgage advisor with Capstone Home Loans.
And I am Lori DaSilva with RE/MAX Elite, specializing in residential purchases and sales.
Great. So what are we talking about today, Lori?
You know, today I wanted to talk a little bit about inspection versus appraisal.
Good one.
Yes, and it comes up quite often when I'm talking to clients. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about what the differences are. I know you can fill in what the lending side of it would be. So
On the appraisal, right.
on the appraisal, yes. So in real estate, what I wanted to say is an inspection is something I usually recommend to a client. It's a really great way for them to get the full scope of what their home is. Now, in the inspection, the number one priority is to discover health and safety. So along with that, it's also physical condition of the home, structure, construction, and mechanical systems. So that's what an inspection will cover. They estimate the useful life of major systems, equipment, and structure finishes. And they also will identify items for repair. Sometimes they like a little input on how much something may cost. They're not experts on pricing those items, but they can kind of give you an idea. And so really just getting to know your home.
Yeah,
So
that's a great thing.
Yeah.
So do you think it's wise to have a inspection on new construction?
That has come up several times. I actually had a client, true story, they were looking at a brand new build and they decided to have an inspection, which was totally fine. And what they discovered was every single faucet they checked had a leak. Every single one. And, you know, new construction doesn't mean perfect. And it's,
Right.
people are human, mistakes happen, so it's good to catch those things right off the bat before you have any kind of flooding or things. So new, not always perfect.
And then I would like to mention that my husband had an addition built onto his house prior to my living with him. But I've been there now for many, many years, and it was time to replace the fan in our bathroom, in my bathroom. So we brought in an electrician, the guy goes up there. Okay, this portion of the house has been built for well over 15 years, almost 20 years.
Right.
The fan had never been hooked up to the vent.
Wow.
The equipment was laying right next to it to do
The box and everything?
The box and everything was
Oh my
laying
goodness.
right there. This was even signed off by an inspector because I went and looked, I pulled all the paperwork because I said, what the heck? So anyway, a very good reason, whether it's a remodel or whether it's a new construction completely, to get that home inspection, at least for those sort of things, because we hear that story a lot.
Yes, we do.
About events not being hooked up properly.
Now, the other thing I will say, be at your inspection. You want to be there with the inspector and your agent as they go through the home. It's also a good reason because they will show you where things are, like your water shut off, which is super important. They'll give you information on your hot water tank, and then also on your furnace. So it's a really good educational piece of purchasing a home.
Great,
So,
great.
Now, why an appraisal and what's the difference?
So I do want to mention that that we as lenders do not require a home inspection. Occasionally there's an occasional program that might, but not very often.
Right.
So it's just totally up to the buyer whether they want to get that home inspection or not, but it is something they really shouldn't miss. Because to spend a little bit of money up front versus many, many thousands later after you've actually bought the home is a big deal. Could be a big deal. So a home appraisal is different. Now, the reason it gets confusing
Yes.
is because when we do the appraisal, we call it the inspection, the appraisal inspection, and so
Right.
that gets confused with the home inspection. But the appraisal is required by the lender. It's not a optional situation.
Right.
It's almost always, it is required by the lender. There's occasion we get a waiver to that, but we're going to talk about the times when it's required. What are we looking for with that appraisal? Number one, the number one thing we're looking for is that what you're paying for the home is what it's appraising for. It can appraise for more, that's great.
Right.
But at least it has to appraise for what you're paying for it. Now, how are they determining that? Or how are they determining the value? Well, it's different than a lot of people think. It's on past comparable sales. Not occasionally they take in account what's going for sale right now as an offset, but it's like properties. So let me give you an example of that. You don't compare a split level to a rambler. They can't do that. And it has to also, it's not about square footage. I had that argument one time with a client. They just would not grasp that. It's not about square footage. It's about like property to like property, and then within a certain proximity. So you can't be using a home in Everett and compare it to a home in Redmond as an example, since we're right here in this part of the country.
Right.
So that's a really big thing. The other reason they're looking at the home is for, again, health and safety, but a little bit different than what the inspector is. They're not going to get so in depth. They're not getting up on your roof. They're not getting in your crawl space. What they're looking for, and it also depends on the loan program, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a few minutes, that is it following the parameters of the loan program? That's really important. So health and safety could be a couple of different things, but that is also what they're looking for in an appraisal.
Right. Now, I was going to ask you, speaking of loan types, we have conventional, FHA, VA, there are other types of loans, but what is the difference of an appraisal in those situations?
Right. So going back to the health and safety, so FHA, VA, and USDA, considered government loans, have a different priority than a conventional loan or conforming loan. Conventional conforming loan. So health and safety is not as big a deal with conventional loan in these things. In FHA, USDA, and VA, you have to have things like cupboard doors, doors on the rooms, railings that are not wonky or missing, steps that aren't missing or broken, handrails, depending on how high something is. An interesting thing is, say it's got 2 bathrooms, they must both be complete. Whereas in conventional lending, as long as one's functional and complete, the other one doesn't have to be. So, you know, you definitely can't have like a hole in the floor ready for the toilet with an FHA, VA, and maybe not even with conventional. That's depending, because that's seriously a safety situation, perhaps. But so they're looking at that. And the weird thing about all of the programs, you must have a stove. It's required.
I actually ran into that on a sale. There was no stove, and they, I want to say on that particular home, they had no working heat.
That's important too. Now, it doesn't have to be a furnace with conventional. So we won't get really deep into all of these, but there are definite difference between the loan programs. They're all looking for the same thing, though, that the value matches what you're paying for it, minimum. You can pay more. We can go into that maybe in another episode. But we won't go into that today. Anything else you want to add with this?
Yes, I could also get in the weeds with the whole inspection thing. There's a lot to know about this, but who chooses the inspector? You know, a buyer certainly can choose their own licensed inspector, totally fine. I know I recommend a few different, but it's really up to the buyer to make that decision.
And so I will mention again, the appraisal is the lender's property. I always joke with my clients, it's like, it belongs to the lender, it's ordered by the lender, you get the privilege of paying for it, but you also get a copy of it. So it's totally the lender's property, and it's for them exclusively. So that's the other thing. Anything else you want to add to this?
No, I think some of the other things could be maybe even another another chat, but I think let's end this one
at this way
at this point, and we can maybe cover this another time. But
so if you have any questions or you want to know more about what we've just talked about today, please message us, call us. It'll all be posted there for you to reach out to us, and we'll see you at the next episode.
Thank you for watching.